Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Migdalia Gomez. I am the AVP of Community Engagement here at the Harvard University Employees Credit Union, and I'll be walking us through our webinar this afternoon. Again, thank you for joining us. A little bit about sort of the setup and how we'll be going through the webinar in a moment. But before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about us at the credit union. We are Harvard's not-for-profit financial institution. So what exactly does that mean? Well, we offer the same products and services as a bank, but because we're a not-for-profit financial institution, a credit union, we're able to give back to our membership in a variety of different ways, including lower rates on loans, higher rates on savings accounts. We are accessible anywhere that you are. You can access us online. You can also bank with us virtually. And anyone that is affiliated with Harvard, including students, alum, employees of teaching hospitals, are all eligible to be a member of the credit union. That's all that I will say specifically about the credit union, but if you have any questions or if there's anything I can clarify, you're more than welcome to ask. We do have a free personal finance program. I will be putting this in the chat so that you have access to this. This is available to you, to anyone in your household. And essentially what this does, it's Thrive. It's our free personal finance program. Here you can access a variety of different resources, including workshops such as these. We have online learning tools, online learning courses. We have 10, 15-minute courses that you can take whenever you'd like. You can create an account and you can sign up for multiple courses. We also have on-demand videos, a blog, lots of personal finance resources, all available to you just by being a community member. So please take advantage of those. I did put that link in the chat, and that is available to you at any point. For today's webinar, it is being recorded, and I will be sending out an email most likely tomorrow, if not definitely by Friday. So you will be getting access to these presentation slides and also the recording as well. Also, we do have branches located in the Boston area, Boston and Cambridge area. We did most recently open a new branch at 435 Brookline Ave. So if you are familiar with the Longwood Medical Area or LMA, it is near sort of Sweet Greens. It's right at the floor level of Jocelyn's Diabetes Center, corner of Jocelyn Place and Brookline Ave. So we welcome you to come visit us. We're open Monday through Friday. We have staff that speaks English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, so available to help you in multiple languages, open 9 to 4, Monday through Friday. Okay. So we are here today to talk about ways to increase your cash flow during inflation. Know that these times are challenging. Barely out of the pandemic, and here we are now dealing with inflation. I know for myself, every time I go food shopping, it's alarming. It's scary. I tend to get less items in my cart, but yet the bill isn't going down. It tends to go up higher. So I am definitely experiencing it, as I'm sure many of you are as well. If there's any tips that you have that could be helpful for any of us here, please let us know. We're not going to use the chat today. It's just a little bit easier for me to monitor the questions using the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A. It should appear at the bottom of your screen or on the top, sort of depending on how you're logged in. But the Q&A, I'll monitor those and I'll make sure to answer any questions you have. But we are, even though you can't see each other, we are a good group here. So I'm sure that you may have a tip that may be able to, someone else may be benefit from hearing. So please let's, share tips amongst everyone. And you can submit questions anonymously as well. Know that if you do submit a question, I won't say your name, but if you do type in the question, it sometimes may appear if I answer it live. So just be mindful, you do have the option of submitting questions anonymously. Okay, so how do we go about increasing our cash flow during inflation? So there are a couple different things that we could do in general. We have sort of 3 buckets, if you will. We can reduce our expenses, defer our expenses, and then increase our income. So I'll tackle all of these today, but if there's anything I didn't cover or anything you want me to expand on, again, just use the Q&A. So the first one is, the little bit of the one that seems a little bit harder, but it's the one that we tend to have a little bit more control over, which is reducing or sometimes deferring our expenses. Now, in order for us to reduce or defer our expenses, the first step is to know what our expenses are. A couple of ways that you can go about doing this. One of the ways that you can do, and I do this, is track your expenses. And I know that it may seem like a lot of work, but there are different ways that you can go about this. You can track your expenses maybe for just 2 weeks. So decide, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm going to keep track of everything that I spend, either a notepad on my phone. Maybe I just will track it via Excel. Maybe I'll use one credit card and then I'll export all of the charges that I utilize, or a debit card, and then export the file afterwards. Some people will literally write it down. So whatever works for you, that's one option, to either track it moving forward for a 2-week period or a month. The longer, the better. But I understand that if you haven't tracked your expenses, to go from 0 to a month may seem like a lot. So feel free to make that a little bit smaller. You have to find whatever's going to work for you. Another option is to go back. So either decide, I'm going to, I can't believe it, but June's almost over. So let's say at the beginning of July, you may decide to go back and look at the month of June and actually look at all of your expenses. So if you use multiple credit cards or debit cards, actually logging into each account, pulling the files and putting all of that information either into an Excel. If you prefer using an app, I'll talk a little bit about some options. You can utilize those. And then looking at, okay, now that you have an idea of what those expenses are, then we can talk about possibly reducing what categories you would want to reduce the expenses in. Everyone's finances will be different. So I'm not here to tell anyone, don't buy this, don't do this. You know what's important to you. You know what's important to those in your household. You know what your money goals are. So I've worked with a lot of members and done one-on-ones with them. And a lot of times they go through this exercise, they list their expenses, and then they realize, you know what? I didn't realize that I was spending X dollars a month on ABC, whatever that could be. I don't really want that money to go to that category. So then now that they become aware of that, then that's usually when they'll shift. So for some people, some of the common ones, people may not realize how much they're spending on eating out, on transportation sometimes, even on clothing, on entertainment. So there may be a category that you decide after you see your expenses that, oh, you know what, that's actually an opportunity for me to cut down on that expense. So for example, if you are someone that really doesn't care so much about eating out, going to different restaurants, but you find out that yourself spending more in that category, okay, that's a category that you can decide to reduce your expenses. Or if there's another category, it could be subscription services. We'll talk about that shortly. Nowadays, it's so easy to sign up for things and have monthly deductions taken out that sometimes you don't realize how many different, TV streaming services you may be on, or music streaming. There's so many different services that it does add up. But if you're not utilizing those, you may decide, actually, let me cut back on some of those. A couple of different options that you have additionally to know what expenses you are setting alerts for your spending. Now, for some of us, this may be a little bit too much. For some of us, this could work. For those, if having an alert, and you can set up an alert either on your credit card, through your debit card, that says, alert me every time I spend over X dollars. Some people that I've seen will do it. I know for myself, I do it if I spend over $50. Like, I like to get that credit card notification or that debit card notification. The reason that I like to do this is that it brings awareness. And this slide is all about bringing awareness. And we're going to talk about how to reduce the expenses, how some other money saving tips during these times. But again, we want to start off with that foundation. And part of that foundation is being aware of how much am I spending. And even after we spend it, a lot of times, especially with credit cards or debit cards, you don't really feel when you're spending that money because you're tapping. It's a little bit something, it's a little fun, a little magical, like, oh, I just tapped this and I spent. But if you put an alert, then either if it's you're getting a text message or an email, I personally like getting an email because I'm not necessarily always checking my email, but then after I've made that expense, I can go into my email and just scrolling through my email, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. And that makes me aware. So then for the next couple of days, if I'm off budget, I can make more, I could essentially make less expensive choices in the next couple of days. I could try to sort of lean back on spending as much. And then the cost of debt, which we'll spend a good amount of time talking about, especially now that the rates are so high for loans. So we'll talk about some different options. Now, I mentioned earlier a couple of different budgeting, tools, and some people may want to use Excel. I'm going to ask all of you here, if you use any budgeting app that you like, or any system, if you wouldn't mind putting it in the Q&A, you could either submit that anonymously in the questions, and I'll just share with others, because I always like to hear what people are utilizing, and that way we can all learn from each other. But I'll sort of walk you through all of these. Budgeting tools, are going to come down to your financial personality and what's going to work best for you. For some of us, we hate Excel. If you hate Excel, don't use Excel. If you are somebody that loves apps, then look for a budgeting app. So for budgeting apps, some of the common ones are Mint. That's a very, very popular one. We also have You Need a Budget. That's another common one. Most financial institutions, including us here at the credit union, we tend to have their own budgeting app as well. So for us, if you log on to your online banking account through the desktop, so not through your app, but first through the desktop, you can actually set up a budget and then have that be a part of your mobile experience. So when you log onto your mobile app, you'll be able to see your budget. The benefit of sometimes utilizing online banking budgets or the Mint and other apps is that you can have the expenses automatically categorized. So you don't have to go in and categorize the expenses yourself. Another option, if you do like the Excel and the worksheets, is exporting your files from, let's say, your credit card company, your bank account / debit account, and having the expenses exported. With that system, you usually have to categorize yourself. They usually will categorize for you, but sometimes you may need to switch or categories. And then the envelope cash method, this is one that is actually making a comeback. I see this a lot of times now on social media. A lot of people love this. It's the cash method, the budgeting, a lot of different budgeting apps. But essentially what this is, you take an envelope, and nowadays these envelopes are getting fancy. You don't have to get a fancy envelope, but I've seen a lot of but you know what, if you like a fancier envelope, you can decorate it yourself, or I know that they do sell some envelopes, but you essentially take an envelope and you put in the money for the month that you want to spend on a specific category. So this is all about cash. So if I want to spend $300 on groceries this month, I would put $300 in my envelope, mark it groceries. When I go to the supermarket, I use only that envelope. If I don't have, once I run out of money, I'm done. No more going into other envelopes necessarily. Like that's 300, that's for groceries. If I have $50 for clothing, that's $50 for clothing. 200 for gas is 200 for gas. And I try not to, once it's gone, it's basically gone. So that's another method. Again, whichever one of these is going to work is really going to depend on your personality. If you haven't tried any of them, I recommend starting off with sort of the online banking budget, because that one is already, it's the one that has sort of the least barriers. A lot of the financial institutions have done most of the pre-work for you. So it's a good one to get started. And I will also share a resource. So if you want someone to actually help you with your budget, or you want someone to create a budget for you, we have that available to you for free through one of our partners. So we pay for it, so it's available to you. Also, an important piece, we are going to talk a little bit about obviously deferring expenses and increasing cash flow. But with that, I also want to mention the importance of emergency fund, or another way I like to refer to this as opportunity fund. So this is the pool of money that if an emergency comes up or an opportunity to do something fun, you can hopefully dip into and then have more options available to you. Calculating the 6 to 9 months of expenses, that's what everyone recommends, the financial experts, but realistically, that's a big amount of money. Like even if we think that $1,000 would cover our monthly expense, which I don't know about you, but that would not cover it for me. But let's say, for easy math, $1,000 would cover your expenses. That $1,000, if I had to cover 9 months of expenses, that's $9,000. If I'm at a zero, to go from 0 to 9,000 can be extremely overwhelming. So instead, I suggest start small. One, open an emergency savings account if you don't already have one. If you do, and make sure that it's something that it's a little bit harder for you to access, in the sense that maybe it's not tied to your checking account, so you can't easily transfer back and forth. You really want it to be for emergency or opportunities. And then set a goal for yourself. Maybe it's, I'm going to start with $50. I'm going to get to $250, to $500, and then slowly add increments that are more manageable. And then, when you get to 1 month of expense, then maybe try to go to 2 months, etc. But start really small, because you want to set yourself up for goals that are achievable instead of goals that are overwhelming. Okay, so now we're going to get into the deferring your expenses. So I know I went through all of those different pieces, and that's important because I need to know what my expenses are. But now that I know what some of these expenses are, how can I actually reduce them? So there are a couple of different ways here. I, again, encourage you in the chat, if you have any tips, please put them in there and I'll share with everyone. One of the most recent ones that we started mentioning to our attendees at webinars are the MVNOs, or the mobile virtual network operator. This is essentially another option for phone services. So instead of having an account with a T-Mobile or Verizon, you can have phone accounts that are online, or excuse me, set up through online carriers essentially. So it's less expensive, it's more affordable. This is a good option to look into. The coverage typically tends to be pretty good, pretty comparable. There may be some areas that it's not as good, but it's a good option if you find that your phone bill is one of the highest expenses, or if it's a category that you realize you don't want to be spending that much money on that phone service. Also, another one that's very popular is the private label item. So especially going food shopping, a lot of the cereals that are, or even seltzer waters, or a lot of common ketchups, a lot of common food items are made for the supermarket that you're shopping at, and they're made by the same big brand name. So that's one way to save. Also, for either homeowners or even renters, making your house energy efficient, making your apartment energy efficient. And again, this is not just for those that own, this is all, they're also, Mass Saves also has options for those that rent. To learn more about this, you can go to masssaves.org. We also have some information on our website, but essentially what they do is they can come to your home, do an energy assessment, provide you with energy efficient, sometimes they can provide you with energy efficient light bulbs, or sort of depends where you live and what promos they have. Sometimes I know I've done it. They've provided me sometimes with lamps. They provided me with outlets. So sort of depends where you live and what your needs are, but they can also help with insulation. Is for the homeowners. If you live in a home that isn't insulated, they can also help with that process as well. I talked a little bit about this one before, is reviewing subscription services. So by those, I'm talking about the Apple TVs, the Hulus, the Netflix, the list, the Spotify's, the list can go on. If you have, there are so many, and I know myself, I signed up for a good amount of these during COVID. I signed up for those mail delivery services where they would mail you a different, like a care box. Starts off sometimes like $30, but it can add up. So that was one of the first things that I sort of cut back on. But I did have it during COVID. It was one of my things to look forward to every month when I couldn't go outside. Also, another big one, especially right now during the summer, is using public services. So by this, I mean for the libraries. Libraries, you can get museum passes. You can still rent movies. You can actually also, if you have either a Kindle, and even if you don't have a Kindle, you can actually download a free Kindle app on your phone, and you can go to the library and get digital books delivered to your Kindle. And when I say go to the library, but you can also literally just do that online. You don't have to physically go there. Also, just books in general. I am part of a book club, and a lot of my fellow book club members are buying their books, which is, great for them, but it's just not in my budget. So I love to go to the library, see what options they have, and then just download the book. It's been saving me, on average, most of the books are like $20. We read a couple books a year, so it saves me close to a little bit over $100. And that's just for the book club. In general, I also like to read, so it saves me more money than that. With the library, they also have a lot of passes for museums, and especially during the summer, check not only with your local library, but many libraries, especially in Massachusetts, depending on the region that you live in Massachusetts, are part of a larger network. So you may be able to get access to museums that are pretty far away from your home, but that could make for a really good day trip. And you can either usually get passes for not just yourself, but for your family as well. Some of them, they do need to be reserved ahead of time, but that is a very good way to save some money, because I love going to museums, but it does add up. So having the library available is a great option. Transportation is another way, trying to save money using public transportation as much as you can. I do know not as reliable nowadays, unfortunately for us in the Boston area, but it still tends to be less expensive. And then also entertainment, checking with the city or towns that you live in, and locally or in the community, to see what entertainment options are available for free, especially right now during the summer. During the summer, the city of Boston does a great job putting on different concerts, different activities for families. And these are all free, different markets that you can walk around, sometimes museums that are open on certain days that are for free. These are all ways that you can reduce your expenses, especially during the summer, where I know for many of us, this is the time that we want to go out. We want to be out with family and friends, and it could add up here and there. Another big one, and we'll spend a little bit more time on this one, reducing food expenses. So right now, as we know, going to the supermarket can be extremely expensive because of just the way that inflation is right now. Fortunately, we have made it past the, $8 egg cartons. That was very scary. I really missed, I was very surprised. It was just every time I went to the supermarket, I think I went a couple of weeks ago and they were down to $3. And I was so happy to finally see eggs not be $7. It was nice. But still, it's compared to what it was a couple of years ago, even a year ago, still higher. So some of the things to try to reduce those food expenses, definitely cooking at home, planning ahead, comparing supermarkets. That's a really big one. What I mean by comparing supermarkets is just looking at where you're shopping and trying a different supermarket to see if the cost will be less. Typically, where we are, Market Basket and Aldi's will tend to be lower cost. Products are good. It doesn't cost as much as your Whole Foods or sometimes your Trader Joe's. So check to see where you're shopping, especially if you're at a Stop and Shop or Shaw's. Go see the other options, definitely the Market Baskets and Aldi's, to see if it could be more affordable. So I know people that will go to multiple supermarkets depending on what they're shopping for. So that's another option. Also, if you are in the Boston area, Haymarket is wonderful. You can get produce on Saturdays and it is fairly inexpensive, especially if you go towards the end of the day when they're trying to pack up and be gone for the day or the weekend. Haymarket, and I mean Haymarket outside, not the new Boston market that they've built at the Haymarket station. I mean, the real Haymarket where you're speaking with the vendors and the farmers that are selling their produce. Couple of tips before you go food shopping to try to reduce those costs is wait. And what I mean is see what do you have at home and try to utilize that before going food shopping. I know myself, that's one of the things I do, and that does tend to save me a good amount of money because I defer having to go to the supermarket till I mostly use everything that I have at home. So if you're someone that has a relatively full pantry, or maybe you have food in your freezer that you haven't used for a while, that's one way to sort of try to reduce the expenses, is try to really utilize what you have at home first, or shopping for the products that you have at home. So for example, if you have a lot of pasta at home, but you have no sauce, okay, buy some sauce. Or if you have a lot of meat, but you don't have anything to go with it, then buy whatever you'd like to accompany that meat. And then always eating before you go food shopping. I know for myself, I don't know what happens if I go food shopping hungry. I'm just going to buy everything. So definitely making sure you have a snack before. I also bring water with me when I go food shopping. That way, it just helps me, because just not being thirsty isn't good for you either. So that definitely helps, because sometimes we confuse thirst with hunger. I should explain that. Now, the other piece is making a list and including prices. So a lot of times when people go food shopping, we create a list of all the things that we need. And I don't know about you, but when I start to create a list, I don't know, I start getting list happy, and I just start putting a lot of things on the list, and I forget that those items have a cost associated with them. So for me, if I don't put the price next to it, my list will get pretty long and sometimes be out of my budget. So instead, what I do is I'll put a list and then I'll put next to it roughly how much the item will cost if I'm trying to stay on budget. So for example, I might write milk and then put $4 next to it. I might do eggs, put $4 next to it. Meat, chicken, I might put $10 next to it. And yes, I don't know every price. I'm not going to get it 100%, but more or less, I tend to be in the range. And what will happen is, as I'm shopping, I'll be looking at my list and I'll more or less know, okay, I'm pretty close. But if my prices are totally off, I know that I may go over budget, but at least it's giving me a little bit of a frame to stay within. And then I talked a little bit about this one before, but sort of just knowing what you have before you go food shopping. Now, this one is using your household benefit and perks. This is a big money saver for a lot of us. What I mean by this is a lot of businesses are giving us discounts and we don't know about it necessarily. So with your employer, BILH, I would check to see. I know that with I know that a lot of the hospitals have perk pages where they'll email you. I believe all of you probably have something similar through BILH, where you can receive discounts if you go through your perks page. I know for us at Harvard, we have outings and innings. So this means that we have reduced tickets to events, movie passes, reduced tickets, sometimes even reduced books, like through our employee assistance program. Harvard has KGA. They use KGA, and we get free mental health books. So that's a great benefit. We get 2 books a year out of their library. So just check with your employer, see what benefits are available. If anyone that's in attendance knows what that website is or what resources you have, please put it in the Q&A and I'll share with everyone. Also check with your financial institution. So a lot of financial institutions will sometimes offer discounts that you may not be aware of. For example, for us, for our credit union members, we have a website called I Love My Credit Union. We're a part of it, I should say, where you can get discounts to different services, including tax preparing services, discounts on your cell phone. So check with your financial institution to see what discounts you can get. You also have your health insurance card. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with this, working in health insurance in the health industry, but a lot of health insurances will offer you discounts or reimbursements for your gym membership, usually around $150 for your gym membership or online gym equipment that you may be purchasing. So that's another benefit. Credit cards are a big one, especially when you're booking travel or even when you're utilizing your points. So if you do get any cash back on your credit cards, seeing, well, what can you apply that towards? Sometimes you can apply it to get gift cards. You can apply it towards actually applying it towards your bill for that month. So reducing the amount that you have to pay out of pocket. So transferring those points to cash that goes towards paying your credit card bill. Also checking with your alma mater to see if where you graduated, if they offer any discounts. Not sure why exactly what the connection is, but a lot of alma maters, a lot of universities will offer their students or the alumni discounts on insurance, on life insurance. So that's one to look for. I know for phone services, T-Mobile does this. They have discounts on Tuesday. So that's another way that you can save some money. And then with your city and state, many times they offer discounts that you may not be aware of. So I'm just going to take a moment and just ask in the Q&A if there are any ways that you save money, any discounts that you think would be helpful for others to know. While I'm waiting for those to go in, just a couple of other ones that I wanted to mention was taking a look specifically at the credit cards that you utilize and seeing if they provide you with discounts for or benefits or cash back for products that you're already utilizing. And if not, maybe worth looking to see if it makes sense to switch your credit card for something that's going to give you more cash back or more rewards towards purchases that you're already utilizing. Something else for for gas purchases, see if you can sign up for a gas purchase loyalty program. Very hard to say, but I know for Shell, for example, if you sign up with them, it's free to do, but they periodically will send you promos that you can get 25 cents off a gallon, or they'll give you other promotions. So just check, especially if you go more or less to the same gas station, see if it's worth signing up for their gas rewards program. Again, there's no cost to sign up for it. It's just like getting a CVS card and or a Shaw's card or any store card to see if you can get rewards for for purchasing with them. So now we talked a little bit about reducing expenses. What are some ways that we can defer expenses? So right now, for anyone that has federal student loans, your loans are currently being deferred till about the end of the month. So in the next couple of weeks, many people will go into federal loan repayment. However, if when your loans go into repayment, you still need assistance, know that you can contact your servicer. We will be providing many different resources on our blog to help educate folks on what options you have available to you. But know that regardless of when the federal student loans go back into repayment, if you were to need to have another deferral period that would be available to you, you would have to talk to your servicer to see what options are available. Another option that you have available to you is Skip-a-Pay. Now, many lenders, not all, but many lenders will give you the option of skipping a monthly payment. So for example, if you have a car loan, let's say that I have a car loan and this month it's a tough month for me financially, and I just don't have that $300 car payment, or I would prefer to sort of skip this payment. What I could do is I could contact my lender. There tends to be a cost associated with it. It may be around $25, sort of depends on your lender. So you'd have to obviously check with them. But I can contact my lender and say, can I actually skip the payment for this month? What that would mean is that instead of having a payment due in July, my next payment wouldn't be due until August. It would not have a negative impact on my credit score, or in other words, it will not impact my credit score. And that payment will now be added towards, essentially gets pushed back. So if I still had 10 remaining payments, I still have 10 remaining payments, but it would not be, now that I skipped it, if my last payment was October of 2024, my new last payment would be November 2024. So you're literally skipping it and pushing it back a month. That tends to be a very common option with car loans. Sometimes personal loans will have that option as well. If you're not quite sure, contact your lender. They may be able to help you. Even if they don't have a formalized process, most of the times they'll be willing to help you. Now with utilities, this is a big one. we're in the summer months. Hasn't been that warm yet, but I hear it's coming. So if you have a month, if you have, use electricity for your air conditioning, and you have months that are going to be a little bit more expensive, one of the things you can do is contact your utility company to see if you can set up a monthly payment for your utilities. So for your electric or your heat, so that it's more stable, more predictable month to month. So instead of paying, very high amounts in the months of winter. So let's say, and I'm always going to make examples, but the numbers I know won't be exact, but let's say I'm paying $500 in the winter a month. And in the summer, I'm paying maybe $100. Instead of having it be that the summer months, it's less expensive, one of the things that they could do is they can work with you. They'll look at your history for the past year, and they'll give you an average amount to pay each month. And then they'll tell you, okay, this is the amount we want you to pay every month. They'll work with you. So if you have a credit one month, or if one month you use less or more, they'll adjust that. But that's a great way to try to stabilize your monthly utility payments, because they can be, especially in the New England area, they can really fluctuate month to month. So that is one option. You also, especially if you have elders at home, if you have, if you're financially in a tight financial situation, contact your utility company, because they offer a lot of different discounts. Many times they won't promote them, unfortunately, but if you contact them and told them, whether you have someone in the house that's elder and is on a limited income, or whether you are in a limited income, they may be able to offer you, even if it's temporary, they may be able to offer you different heating assistance or electric assistance to help reduce your month-to-month payment. Another option that you have, and if you haven't done this, I always recommend people to review their insurance at least every couple years, because shopping around for insurance is a great way to save money. So if you have, whether it's a car insurance, whether it's home insurance, rentals insurance, shop around. Go to an insurance agent, see what other what options are available to you, and see if you're getting the best option. And this is a good one to pair with the previous slide. See what insurance discounts you can get through your employer, through your alma mater, through sometimes your cell phone company. You never know where you could get a discount. I know for us at the credit union, we actually do offer insurance products. So check with your financial institutions as well. You never know where you can get those discounts. In addition to shopping around to see if you're getting the best option, and that also pretty much almost always will include bundling. So making sure you have one provider for your insurance needs. In addition to that, seeing if the deductible that you pay could be increased. So what that means is that instead of having a lower deductible, so if something happens, I would need to pay $500 out of pocket, then my insurance kicks in. Again, just an example. Instead of having it be $500, I could actually check with my insurance and ask to see what the options would be for a higher deductible. So instead of something happens at 500, then I pay anything above 500, I could say, well, what if something happened and it cost me $1,000? How much would my monthly payment be? Typically, when you have a higher deduction, your monthly payment will be lower. However, if you're going to do that, you just want to make sure that you have the money put aside for that higher deductible, so that if something does happen, you won't be relying on your insurance, or you know that your insurance will kick in after a certain point. So you want to know what that point is, what that deductible amount is, and have that put in your emergency fund. And then debt repayment. I know this one keeps coming up, but we'll talk about it right now. So debt repayment is a big one, especially right now with rates being so high. It is expensive to have debt right now, but we need, many of us need it because either education, our homes, car loans. So I'm going to go through a couple of different examples here, but I do want to point out that the rates are changing. So even though I'm going through these now, know that concept is more important right now than the specific numbers, because the numbers may not match, probably won't match, or will the amount. So it's more concept right here. So one of the recommendations that we have is to calculate the cost of your debt. So what exactly do I mean by this? I mean actually listing out the debts that you have and listing the amount, the term, the rate, your monthly payment, and then calculating what is that interest going to be. You don't have to do this on your own. We have calculators on our website, or you can just Google loan calculators, and many options will come up that are free that you can utilize. You want to calculate the final column, the total interest paid, because this will give you a good idea of what the cost is to have that debt, and essentially what will it cost you to keep that loan if you do nothing else, if you don't refinance, if you don't go through a couple of other options I'll talk about. Once you have that cost, see if it's something that there's ability or there's room for you to reduce. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can look for lower rates, even in this higher rate environment. Personal loans or debt consolidation loans, those are loans that you can utilize to pay off higher interest rate loans or credit card. So if you have a couple of credit cards that are probably anything over, I'd say in the high teens, which a lot of them are right now, or in the 20s, which unfortunately many credit cards are. If you're carrying a balance month to month, it may be worth looking to see if a debt consolidation loan could be beneficial to you. What a debt consolidation loan is that you would apply with the lender for, let's say you have $10,000 in credit card debt for easy math. You would apply for a $10,000 debt consolidation loan with a lender. I know we offer them at the credit unions. Many institutions offer them. What that institution will do is pay off those credit cards on your behalf. And instead of owing $10,000 to the credit card company at 20-something%, now you owe $10,000 at a financial institution at typically a significantly lower interest rate. It's lower than the credit card rate, but it could depend, and it varies. So you want to check with each financial institution to see what those rates are. Right now is not the time to really look into refinancing mortgages or auto loans. They unfortunately are higher. But I am bringing this up now because this presentation is meant to give you a lot of ideas, give you things to consider, and to also be something that in the future you can remember. So hopefully in the future, when rates go down, if you are in a higher rate product right now, you could look to see would it make sense to refinance in the future. Most loans do not have prepayment penalty, especially in the state of Mass, they can't. Which means that if I take out a loan with a company and it's a high rate, and then in 2-3 years the rates go down, I could go to another company and refinance. And you can refinance all of your debt, auto loans, mortgages, credit cards, personal loans. So keep in mind that just because you have a certain rate with the product now doesn't mean that it has to stay that way, especially with student loans as well. With student loan refinancing, I will say if you have any federal student loans, especially working in the medical field, you may want to hold off on refinancing federal student loans, because we don't know what the public service loan forgiveness will look like in a couple of years, even a couple of months. There have been a lot of extensions that have been filed and exceptions. So it could be that if you haven't already, I would recommend looking into public service loan forgiveness for your federal loans. As employees of hospitals, you are eligible you work at a qualified employer. So if you meet the other criteria, you may be eligible to have those loans forgiven. Credit card balance transfer is a little bit of a tricky one. I say that it's tricky because it's a good option if there's a plan associated with it. What I mean by this is that with a credit card balance transfer, if I have a $10,000 credit card balance at 20%, I can open another credit card, and the other credit card may offer me 0% for a year, but they may charge me 3%. So they may say, okay, you're going to pay 3%, $200 of the $10,000, but then that $10,000 will be at 0% for a year. Now that's a good option if I have a plan to pay off that $10,000 in a year. If I don't, and unfortunately this is what tends to happen with a lot of us, I may use that 0% card and then incur more debt and then end up with the $12,000 or $13,000 balance at the end of the 0%. And that at the end of that 0%, the rate goes up higher. So it's a little bit tricky. You want to make sure that if you are going to go with the credit card balance transfer, that you have a plan in place. I will provide you with counselors that you can contact. They can walk you through what may make sense if you were to go with that option. It's a good potential option if there's a plan associated with them. Another option, and this is one that could be very beneficial we have many members that utilize this, is a debt management plan. I always like to start off with what it's not. Debt management plan is not debt settlement. Debt settlement is, let's say I owe $10,000 on that credit card and I don't pay. And then after so many months, years, it gets sent to collection and a collection agency says, you know what, we'll settle for $8,000, just pay us $8,000. That has a negative impact on my credit score. And also lenders can see that. So in the future, when they go to lend to me, they will see that I settled on my debt. Another option, which is the one that I recommend and that I'm speaking about now, is debt management plan. With the debt management plan, what the lender allows you to do is they'll reduce your interest rate if you're in one of these plans. So if my $10,000 debt is at 20%, that credit card company may say, you know what, because you are working with the company and you're on a debt management plan, we'll reduce your interest rate to 5%, which would be great. That means that more of my monthly payment is going towards the principal so that I can actually pay off the debt sooner. Debt management plans are regulated. They're federally regulated. There is a cost to be a part of the plans. In the state of Mass, it's $10 per account. So if I have 2 credit cards that I put in the plan, I would pay $20 a month. But the cost savings and the benefit is higher than the $20 that you're paying. There's financial counseling. They go through your budget with you and they work with you on a monthly basis as often as you need to help you with this plan. This is an example of a debt management plan. So essentially here, and this is an example of one of our members. It's anonymous, so you can't see their specific information, but this member was able to pay off their debt 40 months earlier and save $32,000 in this plan. So before they signed up for the debt management plan, they were paying I think it's about $800 when you add all of this up. Yeah, about $800. But of that $800, most of the money was going towards interest. And this can be honestly devastating. I've been there. Like you're paying $800 and then you see that your principal only went down $75. Like that can be disheartening. So, and the reason for that is that because the balance is so high and so it's the interest that that interest accumulates so quickly. So on a debt management plan, the lender was able to reduce the rates on the different debt that the member had. So every month when they were making more or less the same amount, the $800 payment, but every month more of the payment was going towards the principal. So in this example, and they were paying $400 more they were paying the same amount, but $400 was going towards the principal instead of before where $75 was going towards the principal. There is a cost. So for this member, they had 5 accounts because it's $10 per account. So you can see that they have a $50 fee that they were paying. They still had some overlaid and over limit charges that they were paying when this was pulled. But overall, they were saving about $300 in interest, which meant that more money was going towards the principal. These debt management plans, if you're interested in learning more, it's through GreenPath Financial Wellness. These are the same individuals that can help, same company that can help create a budget for you. So if you want someone to pull a budget or create a budget for you based off of your expenses, you can give them a call. They would ask you some general questions, what your income is, the different expenses that you have, and they'll email you a budget to start from. They also do free credit counseling. So if you wanted to have someone review the credit report to see if there's anything you could do to increase your credit score, they can also help you with that. And they do the debt management counseling or just general debt counseling. So earlier I was talking about balance transfers and knowing and saying that it could be a good option if you have a plan. So what they can do is they can help you create a plan on, okay, if you're going to use this credit card balance transfer, what should your monthly payments be so that you could pay off the card in a year? What should the strategy be? I'm putting their information in the chat. You are welcome to contact them at any point. And I apologize. I'm resent it. It did not go through the first time. So I'm putting that again. But essentially, you can contact them at any time. They're open weekends, late nights, so they're available to help. I'm also putting in the chat the Thrive website. I know a couple of folks joined afterwards, so I want to make sure that you have that. That is where you can access our other personal finance program resources, including different flyers, worksheets. So if you wanted a budgeting worksheet, we have them there. We also have a couple other resources such as our blog and other items. And then the other way to talk about, we talked about deferring expenses, talked about reducing expenses. The other option to sort of help increase the income is to increase your income. And I know this one is a tough one because we don't, it's hard to think about, well, what else am I supposed to do? So I am going to mention, I understand it's difficult, but I do want to give you all of your options, and it's up to you to decide which could work best. For increasing your income, you have a couple of different options. I know a lot of people will sometimes do seasonal work, especially during the summer. I know a lot of people that will take up either waitressing, bartending, or hobbies. I know a lot of people, I have friends that are makeup artists, so they'll do a lot prom season. So they've been really, really busy, or photographers. I know people that will work for Uber or do Lyft. Also individuals that will take a hobby. I mentioned my friend who's a makeup artist, but other hobbies, fitness instructors that may do that on the side to bring in additional income. A couple of other things too that you can do. Maybe it's not, if you don't have a hobby, you're not looking for a necessary part-time job, something else that you can look into is seeing, when was the last time you received a promotion, or maybe within your organization, there's another role that you may want to apply for that may have a higher pay. Additionally, some other things to consider, especially now, a lot of folks will do spring cleaning and either do a yard sale or use different online places to sell some of the items that they may have in their home that they no longer need. So that is something else to consider as well. I know for myself, I actually did that not too long ago. Just had some furniture that I no longer needed, and I was able to make a couple bucks here and there. And, it adds up, but definitely I was surprised, but it definitely did help. And then also knowing the accounts that you have. Right now, the rates for loans are high, but that also means that your rates for savings accounts can be much higher. So take a look at where you have your savings, take a look at where you have your checking account, and see, can you actually get a better rate? For us at the credit union, I am putting on the screen, we do currently have a Smart Rewards savings account that's at 4%. We also have a checking account that you can make interest off of it or get cash back from your checking account. So you can go onto our website, hbcu.org, to learn more, /smart rewards, smart-rewards, or also check with your financial institution. So if you don't bank with us, check with where you bank, check with other, and see, is your money making you money? If it's not, this is definitely the best time to start looking around, because rates are higher, and you don't need to put your money in a certificate of deposit in a CD. You're welcome to, that could be an option, but even a day-to-day savings account, a checking account, they're earning money right now. So if yours isn't, take a look and see if it makes sense for you to open an account elsewhere. I thank you all for joining. I know I went through a good amount of information. So just sort of to recap some next steps, I would recommend setting up a budget if you don't have one already, contacting GreenPath. They can help you with either the budget part or reviewing the debt repayment options. I know that it's tough during these times, expenses are going up, and I know that trying to cut expenses can be challenging. So I want to first say that I thank you for coming. I thank you for taking the time to get this information. And the next step I would recommend is choosing one tip, maybe something that you heard today, or maybe as I was speaking, you thought of something else like, oh, I really want to look into XYZ, and try to get one thing done by next week. So by next week, Friday, whether it's looking up what your interest rates are on your credit cards to see, should you do a debt consolidation loan? Or looking at your accounts, your checking and savings accounts, and seeing, Are you getting any interest off of those accounts? If not, maybe researching to see if it makes sense to switch over to a different account. So try to pick one money tip and try to get that accomplished by next week. You can do more than one if you want. You're definitely welcome to do more than one, but definitely at least try to do one. I thank you all for joining. We also have a blog where you can get more information on any different topic that comes to mind. We put up about 3 different articles a week, so you can subscribe or just log on at any point. We do have a survey, so if you do have a moment, I'd encourage you and welcome you to take that survey, which is just on our website at huecu.org/survey. I will also put that on that link in the chat so that you have that available. I'll be on for another couple of minutes if there's anything that I can answer. As a quick disclaimer, this is all general information. I don't know your specific financial information, so I can't provide you specific financial advice, but I can give you general education. So contact GreenPath if you want that one-on-one, or stop by any of our branches and anyone from the team can help you with any specific question that you may have. I don't see any other questions at the moment, but I will keep this up for a little bit. If there are any questions, please use the Q&A. If not, I thank you all for attending today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.